So the Republican bid to overturn President-elect Joe Biden's victory ended early this morning after the Senate voted 92-7 to dismiss a challenge to Pennsylvania's Electoral College vote. The vote ended a nearly 12-hour saga that saw supporters of Trump mobbing the U.S. Capitol in a violent incident that left 4 people dead. Vice President Mike Pence defied Donald Trump by refusing to block the motion in Congress. Let's speak to Lord Kim Darroch, the UK's former ambassador to the US. Lord Darroch, good to have you with us. Good afternoon. Just give us your overview, first of all. I think we can reasonably say unprecedented scenes on Capitol Hill yesterday.
Yes, there's never been anything like this before. Not just recent American political history, but I think in all American political history. So it is unprecedented. And it was appalling. And as you said, 4 people died. And those images went all around the world. And you can imagine the jubilation in the Kremlin when they saw them, or the way that they have reacted in Tehran and in Beijing and in other countries that aren't the West's friends. So it's a really bad place that we've got to.
That was certainly what I took from this. I thought the global story, whilst understanding that the trauma of those that had died and the terrible, terrifying moments for people around that area when this happened, but objectively looking at this as a global political story, that landscape is changing somewhat. I mean, you mentioned China and Russia and Tehran and places. I mean, is this irredeemable damage?
I don't think it's irredeemable. I think it will take a long time to repair. You and I, as news followers, have seen images before of crowds descending on national parliament buildings and on presidents' offices, but not in a country like America.
Yeah.
So this will send a huge shockwave around the world and has done some serious damage to the reputation of American democracy. Maybe you could say it has implications for all Western democracy that this has happened. And of course it can be repaired. And I would think that Joe Biden may be the person to repair it, because that's part of his skill set. He is a sort of guy who can potentially reunite America. But this morning, it looks very bad.
And it's central, isn't it? And you know this for the many years you dealt with the Americans, the American system, and the highest of politicians, etc. The word democracy is in the DNA of being an American. The idea that this is the mother of all democracies, often referred to. It's absolutely precious. It's key. Everyone is a Democrat with a small d in the USA. So incredible damage to that image. This, as one of my emailers pointed out earlier, this is the sort of thing you might expect to see outside a Venezuelan government building, not in Washington.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as a patriotic Brit, I would say we were democracy long before
I'd agree.
America was. And then I suppose the Greeks would say we have some claims to be the foundation of democracy. But the Americans have always been very proud of their democracy. It's rather different in the way it plays out from us. It's a presidential system. But they have been going through the rituals of the transfer of power from one president to another, from one party to another. And you have thrown into the midst of this, for the first time, as I say, in recent political history, a huge disruptor in the form of Donald Trump, who just hasn't followed the norms of presidential behavior during this process. By the way, there have been signs of this for a long time. And remember, this is a president who said, after some clashes between protesters and white supremacists in Charlottesville, I think back in 2017, that there were some very fine people amongst the white supremacists, and he was very reluctant to criticize their violence then, and one of the protesters was killed then. So there's a track record here. People shouldn't be too surprised at the way that he incited what happened on Capitol Hill last night. I mean, there's form here.
Yeah, many saying, and I mentioned it myself at the beginning of this program, that really all Trump needs in terms of the kind of character that he is, he just needs, his legacy will be that doubt, and he wants that doubt. And in that respect, he kind of, among his own, he sort of got what he wanted.
Well, there's lots of speculation that as he's allowed to, he can run for a second term in 2024, though he'll be 78, I think. by then. And there is no doubt that he wants to stay a political force in the land between now and the next election. And his son, Donald Jr., said in that inflammatory speech to the crowds outside the Capitol yesterday that it's not the Republican Party anymore, it's Donald Trump's Republican Party. He wants to keep his grip on the party. So he aims to be a political force for the next few years, a voice not in the White House anymore, sure, but still a voice with millions of followers. How this impacts on that ambition, we will see. I think it could damage him. I mean, it's striking that some of the people who have supported him strongly all the way through are now jumping ships. So maybe this has been quite damaging to him. But
yeah, I was going to say, what about the Republican Party itself? Because a lot of speculation that it's going to take a heck of a long time for the Republicans as a party to return from all of this.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the party is going to be split. There were 12 odd senators, including some senior figures like Ted Cruz, and something like 120 Republican congressmen who wanted to use last night's process in the Capitol to challenge the outcome of the election, not on the basis of any evidence of fraud, but just because President Trump encouraged them to challenge the result. And that is extraordinary from people who are elected by a democratic process, and you would think would stand up for democracy. Lots of other Republicans have now said, that's it. I mean, notably, for example, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who said, he's had it, no more, congrats to President Biden. So the party is deeply split, and it's going to be very tough for them, because remember, 75 million Americans voted for Donald Trump 3 or 4 weeks ago. So there is still a real bedrock of support for him out there.
And in terms of Joe Biden, I mean, he's got a job to do. We touched on this, Lord Darroch, at the beginning, attempting to heal those wounds, seal those cracks and all the above. Can he do it? I mean, this is not going to be the work of a few months. This is an entire term it might take to if the phrase doesn't overplay it, to heal America.
At least. But it's a huge positive for him that, against all the odds, and for someone who has watched American politics for decades and who just recently out of 3.5 years there, it is extraordinary that Georgia, the state of Georgia, voted in 2 Democrat senators yesterday. That gives Joe Biden the House of Representatives and the Senate, and he's got the White House. So the Democrats have a clean sweep at the moment. They have all the tools they need. So that's a big advantage in terms of taking through his domestic agenda. But he's got to move quickly, because in 2 years' time, you have the midterms. Sure. And the margins are so narrow in all of those, in both houses, that he can lose them again in 2022. So he'll need to get on with it.
Just a final point. Was there something about Trump's tenure that was a positive here, in the sense, a lot of people have talked about his foreign policy in the Middle East, that there were great achievements there, and even the standing up to China. It's been said by many, even by critics of Mr. Trump, that you can't, right now, particularly with China's emergence on the global scene becoming even more dominant, that you need a figure, in the White House that will stand up to the Chinese administration, and Trump was that figure. So he had something going on there, right?
I think you're right that it's important to take a balanced view of the Trump 4 years. And I think on China, Trump is right about China's trade practices, and he's right about China's aggressive activities towards its neighbors in the Asian region. I think you can argue about how he went about challenging China, and I think Biden will have to continue to be tough on China, but will try and multilateralize it and try and bring the Europeans and us and others into the game, and that could present us with some difficult choices. I think Trump was right that NATO, the rest of NATO, was not spending enough on defense, and right to put pressure on that. I think also that Trump, in terms of his domestic policies, identified a demographic was sort of left behind, that is not unique to America. I mean, are left behind, here and in European countries as well. And I don't think he delivered very much for them, but in terms of trying to bring them into politics, into having a voice in politics, you can argue that that's a positive. And I think there are echoes of that in what has happened in the UK. So, of course, there are some achievements there.
Lord Darroch, thank you. Great to have you on with us. Lord Kim Darroch, UK's former ambassador to the United States. He spent a lot of years over there, knows the turf incredibly well. I thought that final point was reasonable to finish on because I think that the Chinese issue is the bit I think that bothers everyone. Will Biden be strong enough to stand up in that respect? And he mentioned NATO there. I'm pretty sure wasn't there a meeting? Wasn't Angela Merkel sitting at the meeting and Trump said to her, "Look, you're not putting enough money in here." And we'd never seen this kind of thing before. You never see politicians kind of going rogue from the template of diplomacy when it comes to how they deal with each other at press conference. He just came out with it. He said, "Sorry, we're putting a heap of money into this thing called NATO, and you guys aren't doing your fair share." And Merkel looked as if somebody had just hit her with a truck. It's like, wow, you're doing this in front of the cameras? And I got that. I understood that. I thought, wow, that kind of works, doesn't it? Will Biden be able to have the same kind of spunk, to coin a phrase, to deal with other leaders in such and perhaps unconventional, but certainly authoritative way?